Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk here at Blackhat USA. We are coming to you live from the Mandalay Bay Hotel, and joining me now is Pedram Amini, CTO of InQuest. Pedram, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
The threat landscape, of course, is changing all the time. This remains true, regardless of the time or the season. Talk about some of the biggest threats to an organization's security from your perspective.
Sure. It's certainly true that the threat landscape's always changing. Every year at this conference at Blackhat, we see new techniques coming out. But if we look at it statistically, the bulk of them are actually the same tactics that have been used for the past decade plus. Right? And if we high level break this down, it comes into attackers are either going after a system or they're going after a user. And while there are system level attacks, from your misconfigured open data store all the way to your flashy nation state sponsored ABT attacks and everything in between, again, statistically, the vast majority of successful attacks we see are users interacting with files. And so we're talking about file-borne breaches, that result in someone interacting with a file that they shouldn't have, and it's a successful attack, or some kind of mistake, a file-borne policy violation that results in an incident. And in both cases, the best way to protect your organization is really to take the decision-making process out of the user's hands.
So I'm curious about this file-borne threat vector that you described here. These attacks clearly are a real danger to organizations. It seems like it's more than just clicking on a bad link. Help us understand why file-based attacks are so dangerous.
Sure. First of all, we got to look at the scale of the problem, right? In a typical large organization, you might have hundreds of thousands of new files traversing the environment on a daily basis. These are your common archives, your office documents, PDF documents, spreadsheets, presentations, this kind of thing. So just managing this breadth is a challenge in and of itself. The problem is further compounded, though, when you look at the asymmetric advantage an attacker may have in the ease of layering one file within another. If we go back to your malicious link as an example, consider I take a malicious link, I put it in an office document, I put that in a PDF file, I password protect that in an archive and email it to you. Your standard security solution here is going to have zero visibility.
Sure. And
this is a problem that plagued the Pentagon's enterprise user community for years. This is the environment that we were born out of. Our approach to the problem never really had a name, but over time our customers named it for us, and that's why we're here at Blackhat to announce the concept of file detection and response, or FDR.
So the market has obviously got a lot of different detection and response products: network detection and response, extended detection response, managed detection, the list goes on and on. As an advocate of file detection and response, for those who are new to the concept, explain how FDR actually works.
Sure. Everyone at this point is familiar with NDR, EDR, XDR. It's our belief that the detection and response world is incomplete without file detection and response. Right, and the first reason for this is, just consider, files are everywhere. They're on the network, they're in the cloud, they're on USB sticks. Generically, they're in use, in motion, or at rest. And so you need something like FDR just to provide a holistic view into this unstructured and otherwise fractured data source. That's the first pillar, is just collection. The second pillar is scale. And with scale, there's four dimensions. There's the breadth, there's the depth, there is looking beyond just a single file, looking at like a corpus of files, and there's also a concept of looking across time. On the breadth factor, InQuest FDR can handle millions of files a day at a reasonable cost. On depth, this is one of our key technologies, deep file inspection, where we shine. The nature of files is that they're layered, and especially when an attacker takes advantage of it, he might add multiple layers to add confusion to it. So we blow these file formats apart, and then we take every logical layer and we shine it up against a series of different detection components before wrapping it all up into one easily digestible IQ score. This depth of analysis is a tantamount to what we're doing. It eases the burden for both man and machine, and by the way, it takes about 3 seconds to do, so it has just enormous scale. The final dimension there is time. With InQuest retro hunting is a technology that we have there where we're not just looking at the files today being seen, but reconsidering those from the past, given our latest threat intelligence. And the third and final pillar, I would say, to FDR is automation. It's elevating analysts out of the SOC grind. It's automating a lot of the mundane, and that includes interoperating with tooling that might be in your environment, though applying our lens of experience to the results so that we have a single, consistent, and trustworthy score across any file, seen at any time, pulled from anywhere.
So even before the pandemic, staffing and hiring for security practitioners in the SOC was a challenge even then, even more so now. Is there a way that file detection and response can help out here?
Yeah, absolutely, and what you're saying is true. Fully agreed. I mean, retention is difficult. The SOC churn is rivaled only by their CISO. Where the average lifespan is less than 2 years, with a quarter of them quitting after the first year. And so there's really two ways that FDR helps. One is just reducing the amount of noise, the amount of work that's being done. We can use this deep file inspection technology to implement really granular policy that strips away the TTPs that actors are using, making it a little bit more expensive for them to come after your users in your environment. And then on the other half is, you reduce the workload, and then you force multiply what your guys can actually do. And that's done through a series of automation, making it, taking the mundane and the trite and automating that portion, freeing the human analysts to do what they really want to do, threat hunting. And this problem space is one that our founder dealt with for 15 years, running the Pentagon's computer incident response team. It was in this environment that our solution was first born, built by the SOC analysts in support of a mission where failure wasn't an option, and now it's available to the private sector as a service.
For some viewers, a phrase like automated threat hunting may sound like a code word for artificial intelligence or machine learning. Does the automation that you're describing also include AI or ML?
Well, you know what they say about the difference between AI and ML. Artificial intelligence is covered in PowerPoint presentations, and machine learning is implemented in Python. I'm very skeptical of AI-based solutions in our space, at least one that would provide any kind of reasonable fidelity with its responses, something that you're not going to get drowned in false positives. But look, of course we use machine learning. We're huge proponents of man plus machine. It's actually InQuest deep file inspection that fuels something like 80% of our model's features, right? It's these layers that are otherwise hidden in the file that we're extruding that drives these models. And look, at the end of the day, you require all these different lenses to tell not only if something is bad or good, benign or potentially suspicious, but also to fine tune, if I have a limited number of human analysts and 100,000 files in the environment, how do I know which ones to focus my very valuable human cognition on? And that's another key attribute of FDR, is not just labeling all the files as benign or malicious, but also here are the ones that we find interesting beyond what the machine can do. Let's get some eyes on that.
You mentioned real-time intelligence as part of automated threat hunting. Can you talk a bit about the sources of that threat intel?
Sure. Yeah. There's no silver bullet, right? And we know that things are going to get through. That's why we have a whole ecosystem around reducing dwell time and breach suppression. But the question becomes, how do we apply the knowledge of today to the data that we captured yesterday? And before we even dive into that, in terms of like intel, we're talking about guys who have been following the intelligence doctrine, right? So these are seasoned practitioners, and we've got many public examples of indicators that we've pushed to customers that were quite literally years ahead of their public dissemination through firms like the FBI and CISA, right? So we're clearly doing something right there on the production side of our intel. We'll also partner with folks to grab intel. We'll throw everything in the kitchen sink at the problem. One example partnership that I can highlight is our partnership with Microsoft through their Microsoft Active Protection Program. This MAP program provides us and other partners with information about the security patches that, for example, came out yesterday. We'll get them a week prior. That gives us time to really take our time, write properly tuned detection logic that's properly tested. And critically, through InQuest retro hunting, once we release this intel back out to the field, we'll know, for example, if one of our customers was targeted by a zero-day that only now came to light.
Great stuff, Pedram. Really appreciate you joining us and giving us a fresh perspective on detection and response, in this case, file detection and response.
Thank you
Thanks
very
for
much.
joining us on Dark Reading News Desk.
All right, I appreciate it.
We've been talking with Pedram Amini of InQuest. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks very much.